Hi, my name is Rick Edgeman. I'm professor and chair of the management department at Fort Hays State University in Kansas, USA. Additionally, I've held positions in the Shingo Institute at Utah State University in the John M. Huntsman School of Business, where I was research director and professor of management practice, at Aarhus University in Denmark, where I was tenured full professor of sustainability and enterprise performance, and an honorary position at the University of Southern Denmark as honorary professor of engineering operations management in the technology and innovation department. So those are all hats that I continue to wear in one role or another. At Aarhus University, I continue in 20% appointment. At the University of Southern Denmark, that is a strictly honorary position, and I perform occasional duties. And then with the Shingo Institute, I actually maintain official contact with them and oversee the research award work that goes on. So my involvement with the Shingo Institute is what's fundamental today for your purposes, in the sense that today we're going to be talking about a large portion, an important portion of the Shingo model for operational excellence. And that is the model that lies behind the Shingo Prize. So the Shingo model looks like you see right here. And fundamentally what you're seeing is that at the heart of the model you have organizational culture. But organizational culture is always driven by guiding principles. There happen to be 10 principles associated with the Shingo model. Enterprises will have any number of guiding principles that are not among those included in the Shingo model, but if they're following the Shingo model in their pursuit of excellent performance, sustainable excellent performance, then they will have those 10 principles included among their overall set. So culture at the heart of the model. Culture is driven by guiding principles, but at the same time, every organization, every enterprise exists to create results for important stakeholders as they see them. So we're trying to drive results, to deliver those results to those stakeholders, and it is important to be able to do that. And we do that through tools that are organized into larger systems, generally speaking. We also do that through things like policies, practices, partnerships, and so on. So that's what the model looks like. But then there are those principles. And the principles are organized into four-dimensional categories. They usually just say four dimensions in the Shingo context. And you can see those proceeding from the bottom to the top of this triangle. You can see that we start with cultural enablers, move on to continuous improvement, onto enterprise alignment, and finally end up at results. Today we're going to focus on those top two dimensions, enterprise alignment and results. And with the three principles that are associated with those two dimensions. In enterprise alignment, that would be create constancy of purpose and think systemically. In results, it's create value for the customer, although we will think more broadly about creating value for stakeholders. There are 7 other principles. Those lie in the cultural enablers dimension and in the quality improvement dimension. Those are topics of prior presentations that you should view before you view this particular presentation. Much of what resides inside the Shingo model, and for that matter, in many of the alternative models that might be out there, for example, America's Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award or Europe's EFQM Excellence Award. Those insights, deep insights that help drive those are the ones that we have listed here, which is that ideal results require ideal behaviors. But the question is, how do you produce those ideal behaviors? Well, purpose and systems drive behaviors. And we have talked about that in a prior presentation, but a good example would be something like the reward and recognition system at an organization. So ordinarily speaking, we say something like this: what gets measured is what gets done. And the reason that what gets measured is what gets done or performed is that people tend to perform according to what they get rewarded for or what they get punished by. So the reward and recognition system is fundamental in almost every organization to producing results. That is a particular system. Purpose and systems drive behaviors. But those behaviors need to be informed by something, and it's principles that inform behavior. So we're focusing today on 3 specific principles of the 10 in the Shingo model. Those 3 specific principles are: create constancy of purpose. Now, some of you may be familiar with this language, create constancy of purpose, and if so, there's a good chance that you have studied the teachings of Dr. W. Edwards Deming, who may be the guru of all gurus of all time in the area of quality management and quality improvement. But Dr. Deming intended that a little bit differently than it's intended in the Shingo model. So in Dr. Deming's model, it was create constancy of purpose for the improvement of products and systems, and to do that forever and ever and ever, with his ultimate goal being one of produce jobs, jobs, and more jobs, or create jobs, jobs, and more jobs. In other words, for him it was a path to prosperity, so to speak. In the Shingo context, we regard constancy of purpose and its creation as a little bit different. We basically mean that we want to formulate unity of purpose inside the organization around a common or shared vision, so that with that unity of purpose, and we really mean that we have a critical mass of people who buy into that purpose, so that collectively we can advance the mission and the vision of the organization. So create constancy of purpose, unity of purpose, shared vision is what you're looking for. Think systemically. Think systemically, it has 2 basic meanings. One of those meanings is, in fact, we need to deeply consider systems themselves. But the other, normally when we talk about think systemically, is that we want to think about how it is that we improve the entire organization, how things manifest everywhere in the same ways, and how it is that we improve those ways of performing things. So think systemically. And then in the results category, we have create value for the customer, or as I would say more broadly, stakeholders. So the customer may be the primary stakeholder in any given enterprise. On the other hand, they are not, ordinarily speaking, the only stakeholder. We always have stakeholders such as enterprise human ecology, which would be the human resource in the organization. We have communities in which enterprises function. We have governments that they may or may not serve or that they provide tax monies to. We have shareholders who are looking to benefit from the financial performance, let's say, of the organization, and so on. So there are a number of stakeholders. They may not be equally important, and the prioritization list of those stakeholders may vary from organization to organization, but we create value for stakeholders. It's just that the normal language is to say, create value for customers. There are some learning objectives that are associated with this particular presentation. One would be to better understand the Shingo model broadly, but most specifically its 2 dimensions of enterprise alignment and results. We want to strengthen our understanding of the relationship between behaviors, systems, and principles. And we need to learn how systems and behaviors drive results. And again, in my view, it is important that you see the 3 videos, the 3 presentations that precede this one. One of those is a broad overview of the Shingo model and its guiding principles. It discusses what ideal behaviors are, what ideal results are. It discusses more deeply those 3 insights of enterprise excellence and so on. So that would be the first one. The second one would look at the cultural enablers category and the 2 principles that are in that of lead with humility and respect every individual. The third video, the one that you should watch just prior to watching this one, the third presentation, is a presentation on the 5 principles inside the continuous improvement dimension of the Shingo model. We're now looking at the 3rd and 4th dimensions of the Shingo model, which would be enterprise alignment and its 2 principles, and the results category, the results dimension. So that's what we're hoping to learn about. And then finally, learn how systems and behaviors drive results. So the recommendation is that for every purpose that you consider it deeply, or for every, not for every purpose, but for every principle, that you consider it deeply by doing a purpose expansion. In other words, what is the purpose of this principle? Why is it that this is so important? What value does it deliver? What are the consequences of following it? What are the consequences of ignoring that? Because we can choose to pursue or to ignore any given principle. Nevertheless, we are subject to its consequences, positive and or negative. So always ask yourself for any given principle, and I would recommend all 10 in the Shingo model to consider deeply, but most certainly the 3 that we'll discuss in this presentation, as well as the other purposes that are central to the organization, or other principles rather, that are central to the organization, because you function inside an organization. What's important in the organization? Why? Why is it important? Answer that first level question. Why is this principle important? And then ask a second why, and a third why, and a fourth why, and a fifth why, and go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. That's the idea behind a purpose expansion when you're talking about a principle, or for that matter, anything else. It's often referred to as 5 why analysis. So you should be asking yourself overall, for any given principle, why is this principle of value to your enterprise, your organization, and what difference does it make when people know why? Not just what, not just how, but why. What's the value that it delivers doing these things? And then you should ask yourself, what did you learn about each principle from studying systems in your organization? What are some of the current beliefs regarding the principles? How do the beliefs impact behaviors inside your organizations? And by the way, as I said, you can certainly choose to ignore certain principles. You're still going to be subject to the consequences of those principles. So let's look at the principle of enterprise alignment, the 2 principles of enterprise alignment. Okay? That's what we're after right now. Let's look at a quick overview.
So alignment is when all the handoffs in an organization occur properly and everybody sees the next person along the way in producing a good or service as their customer, so that you're in sync with each other and handoffs occur so that the organization operates as a system. We see integration as the next step, and it's really going from alignment to integration so that there is concurrent planning, there's concurrent operation, and the whole is more than the sum of the parts.
It touches every part of the enterprise, so your manufacturing operations, your office, administrative type functions, and HR and IT and finance as examples. And really it ties everything together as it relates to constancy of purpose, alignment of objectives from top to bottom. And if your organization is aligned in this manner and you're driving these principles in the enterprise, you'll see this from top to bottom.
So in that video, you saw Harry Hertz, and I should give special mention to Harry Hertz. Harry is a longtime friend. I've known him for more than 20 years, and for more than 20 years, he was the director of the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award Program, which is America's dominant quality award. It is an alternative to the Shingo Prize for Operational Excellence. It's an alternative to or an analog at least, to the EFQM Excellence Award in Europe. But the dominant global prize is the Shingo Prize. And it's partly dominant because it resonates with so many organizations, so many enterprises, but it's also dominant because it is the only prize that organizations from all around the world are eligible to pursue. So let's look at one of those 2 principles inside the enterprise alignment category or dimension of the Shingo model, constancy of purpose. So this is what Dr. W. Edwards Deming said. Deming said, create constancy of purpose toward improvement of product and system with the aim to become competitive, stay in business, and to provide jobs. So that was his motivation. It was a path toward prosperity. Remember that within the context of the Shingo model, though you may be familiar with Dr. Deming's approach, and by the way, I'm a Demingite. I am very much an adherent to his philosophy. But I recognize that his philosophy is one, it's an exceptional one, but there are others that can augment some of what he did, or that stand somewhat in contrast to what he did in his philosophy, and that you learn and grow from learning from the best, wherever the best may be. and there's not just one best usually, not in something as diverse as quality improvement or productivity improvement. So this was Dr. W. Edwards Deming's perspective of create constancy of purpose. But remember that in the Shingo context, what we mean by create constancy of purpose is essentially to create unity of purpose, to get that essentially essential mass, okay, that critical mass of people in the organization, the right people, the right number of people that you need to have to be able to move the organization forward in a positive manner around a shared vision. There's a business case for doing that. The business case is the unwavering clarity of why the organization exists, where it's going or attempting to go, how it will get there, enables people in the organization to align their actions, as well as to innovate, adapt, and take risk with greater confidence. There are also some societal and individual implications. Success depends on commitment to a shared understanding of why it is that we being the organization, exist. So let's take a little look at some practical advice about why this is so important.
The constancy of purpose is really important. It's important that people know why they're at work. It's important that people know what the thing they need to focus on most is. And it's important to have something that binds the whole team together. So for us, in our organisation, it's around our group vision, which is securing and excelling at securing and enhancing the financial well-being of people, business and communities. So having that in mind and having it at the heart of all your decision making means that you are making decisions for the right reason. The behaviours you'll see are people making decisions consciously with that true north in mind. You'll see people acting in accordance with the true north or with your vision. And you'll see customers being served or customer outcomes being improved by the alignment of people's activities with the organization's purpose. So whether it's a big decision or whether it's a small decision, whether it's infiltrating how you work with customers, we have thousands of staff in the bank that work with customers every day, and showing the vision and values of the organization, having that as their true north, means that when they're serving customers, they're getting great results and they're doing things in the right way.
Constancy of purpose is a key element that helps make leaders make sure that their organizations are able to help them attain their strategic goals because they have the right focus and the right drive to make the improvements required to meet that mission. In the absence of a unifying focus, people will improve locally. We found that change and improvement is in people's DNA. They like to make things better locally. Many times, though, that change locally is not at the benefit of the whole or focused on the right thing and can even detract from the resources available to make and to meet the primary goals. So setting a focus point, an enterprise-wide goal, and then communicating it and helping reinforce or drive there by reinforcing good behavior is a key element of leadership.
So constancy of purpose for us has been a big focus for our leadership team in particular. And what we've noticed is the power of when you bring a cross-functional team together, different people, different ideas, different experiences, but when you align them around one goal or objective that they're looking to achieve, the power and innovation that comes out of that constancy. It's been a very powerful principle for us. It's really allowed us to focus on what we are trying to achieve and bringing a lot of people together. And what it's really created for our organization is the ability to kind of harness all the energy and ideas and really move them towards productive, innovative ideas that's helping us achieve some of our business objectives and improve the overall customer experience.
There was an important point that was made in that video that you may have overlooked. And that important point was from the second speaker, and he said that improvement is in people's DNA. That you can improve locally even when there's not, let's say, some organizational organizational priority or organizational arrangement that tries to move forward in a uniform way or tries to move forward toward a specific result. You can improve locally, but remember what that speaker said. You can improve locally, but sometimes improving locally is to the detriment of the overall system and can be a drain on resources that might be better spent or better invested or better utilized elsewhere. So this is part of the idea also behind think systemically, that we have to think big picture. We have to think how things work together for the common good. That's what we're really looking for, is working together for the common good, which is the idea behind a Japanese word called kaiosei, living and working together for the common good, by moving in a unified direction, India purpose, to accomplish that shared vision, common good, let's say. So that was an embedded nugget that was there from the second speaker. Let's look at systemic thinking. So we just talked about that just a little bit in just that commentary that I just made. But there is a business case for systemic thinking, and by what it means is by understanding the relationships and the interconnectedness within a given system, we're able to make better decisions and improvements. Now, you might make improvements regardless, but maybe not as wonderful or exceptional as the improvements that you can make if in fact you have a systemic view. Because until you know how everything works together and moves in a common direction, you won't necessarily know the best decision that you can make to move the overall entity in the direction it needs to go in the best way. So there are some societal and individual implications as well. As we see how and why everything is connected to or a part of something else, that helps us to better understand and to predict and control outcomes. It's one thing to be able to predict something, it's another thing to be able to control the direction in which something moves. That understanding can help us do that. So in other words, it can help us better understand and determine how to act in ways that will help us get to the destination we want to get to, rather than just predicting some destination we will arrive at eventually. And then we get to the last principle in the Shingo model. It is in the results category, and it is create value for the customer. Business case for that. Now, remember that when I say customer, I'm really thinking stakeholders more broadly. Business case for this is that ultimately value must be defined through the lens of what the customer or stakeholders want, what they're willing to pay for, okay? What the value proposition is to your stakeholders. That's really what we're talking for, is that we need to be able to understand what the value proposition is. What is it that we're offering in exchange for what they're willing to give to us? So organizations that fail to deliver both effectively and efficiently on this most fundamental outcome can't really be sustained over the long term unless they're ones in non-competitive environments, ones where they have captive audiences. And then there's the potential that they could survive for a very long time, as long as the audience is in fact captive. Trust is absolutely foundational to this. So let's take a quick look at a results video and see what some truly experienced and high-level practitioners have to say about this.
My name is Rick Whitman. I am a senior lean manufacturing champion for Hayworth, based in Holland, Michigan. We are an office furniture manufacturer. Results are at the top of the pyramid for Shingo on their principles, and it's extremely important, and that's what we're all here about. So everything in the rest of the model is supporting the results and customer-focused results. So that's really the key outcome of everything in the Shingo model.
The results come. Instead of always focusing on dollars and savings, it's about focus on the people, both external people, which are customers, and internal staff. That drives the culture, which drives the results.
Now let's look at a truly exceptional company with a very long history. We'll be looking at a plant in Swansea, Wales, in the United Kingdom, and it is VALE. The particular property that you'll see the action taking place in is actually quite an old property. It's over 100 years old. And part of the reason that I'm making that point is that it isn't just new automation or new innovation that's necessarily going to take care of the improvement that a plant or that an organization needs to experience. That in fact, the culture itself is part of what drives the new accomplishments and the better performance that organizations need to be able to attain. So let's look at not VALE, which is probably the way you're reading it, but VALE.
So these are our strategy deployment boards. They're located in our reception area where all of our employees pass as they come into work each day. From a high level, what we're about here is improving every day to achieve excellence in all that we do. Our refinery's been here for 100 years, and we want to give ourselves the best chance of being here another 100 years in the future. And so it's really important that we are really good at what we do. So what this board describes is what that means for each of the teams around the refinery. From a safety, health and environment perspective, it's about zero harm to people in the environment. For quality and continuous improvement, it's about being a refinery of choice for our customers. Financially, it's important that we control our costs through effective financial management. From a maintenance side, it's about having a world-class maintenance organisation to maintain our assets. For operations, our aspiration is to achieve £100 million of annual nickel production, which would be a true production record for the site. From the people side of things, last but not least, we want this refinery to be a great place to work, where our employees feel empowered and engaged. And at the bottom of the chart here are our behavioural standards. They really speak to how we want our people to engage with each other as they go about their day-to-day work. And these standards were developed by all of our employees, so they're certainly not management behaviours. These are people's views within the organisation of how we want to treat each other and how we want to be treated. Each of the boards, we actually have the aspiration at the top, and we look at the vision in that area. So here, as well as work around reducing accidents and reporting incidents, the work here is about being proactive, about promoting health and well-being, and looking after the environment. And what we're doing here is we're looking at the historical trend for KPIs that are associated with that, so lost time injuries and nickel emissions from the refinery. And then the current performance is also plotted here. So we know what we're trying to achieve. The history is telling us how we're doing. And the current performance is telling us whether we're going in the right direction. And it's that check part of the plan, do, check, act cycle of making sure that the continuous improvement that we're applying in each of these areas is generating the results that we want to see. So from a quality and continuous improvement perspective, we want this refinery to be the refinery of choice for our customers. So we want our customers to want to buy nickel from this refinery because they like our quality and they like our customer service approach. So our approach here is about reducing customer complaints, and it's really about engaging our employees to come up with and implement improvement suggestions throughout the refinery. And as you can see here, we've implemented over 1,600 improvement suggestions in the refinery since we kicked off this scheme back in 2009. And even though some of those may be very small improvements, cumulatively, that represents a really dramatic improvement across the refinery. From an operations perspective, our approach is about achieving a record annual nickel production of £100 million, which is something that we've never achieved previously. Taking a scientific approach, we look at what we need to do in order to achieve that. So we need to increase the amount of nickel that we're extracting through our process, and we've got various projects leading into that. We need to increase the feed rates that we're running at within the refinery. And we also need to reduce downtime. So we've broken those three aspects down into the individual projects that contribute to that. The key way of doing that is to use continuous improvement and the various tools that can help us to achieve that. And when you look at annual nickel production, 2013 was an annual production record year, and we believe that in the future, if we have sufficient feed from our suppliers, we can go on to smash that record again in the future.
So you can see from what Fiona Guthrie had to say that this video has a little bit of dating to it, that it dates to being made, I believe, in 2014. But nevertheless, you can see the sort of results that they had had to that point in time, and that their expectations were from improved results and hence improved delivery of value to their customers. Now, they actually were showing improvement that created value for different stakeholders. The idea of zero harm to people and environment certainly is something that benefits their own human ecology, their own human resource, because it creates a healthier environment for them, a safer environment for them to work in, and so on. So you can see the values created for stakeholders broadly, although the quote-unquote customer may be king among those stakeholders for any given organization. So what about Shingo's approach to productivity? And when I say Shingo, I mean Shigeo Shingo, for whom the Shingo Institute and the Shingo Prize for Operational Excellence are named. And in fact, he gave his approval prior to his death. The Shingo Institute and the Shingo Prize have been around since 1988, first awarded in 1989, making it contemporaneous with the other two awards that I've mentioned, America's Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award and also the EFQM Excellence Award in Europe. He said that in the final analysis, national prosperity depends on improved productivity, and conversely, it is only on a foundation of increased productivity that we can build a wealthy nation and happy citizens.